Welcome at this video about the power of words and images. And words are very, very powerful. And I will show that with an example. Two groups of students were shown a video of a car crash. But there was a difference. One group, the video was introduced in two cars will smash into each other. And the other group, the video was introduced as two cars will contact each other. After having seen the video, the groups of students were asked, what do you think was the average speed of the cars? And of the group where the car incident was introduced as two cars were smashing into each other, they thought the average speed of the cars was around 70 kilometers an hour. In the other group, where the video was introduced as two cars will contact each other, the average speed was 50 kilometers an hour. So just by using another word, the average speed was a difference of 20 kilometers an hour. Then the students were asked another question. Who saw glass lying on the ground? Well, in the group where the video was introduced, two cars are smashing into each other. More than 3 times as much students saw glass lying on the ground. But there was no glass at all lying on the ground, so they just imagined glass. So the words also started imagination. You are filling in gaps. So very, very powerful word. You see that also now around the corona crisis. We look at a certain lens to reality. And that lens forms our image of the world, and we don't see anything, but words can help us see in a different way. Let me give you a few examples. In the Netherlands, President Rutte said we are going to intelligent lockdown. Lockdown is a very negative word. We're locking people in prison. Yeah? If you commit a crime, you're going to be locked into a prison. But if you say intelligent lockdown, you say, okay, we are very intelligent. We are clever. We do it in a clever way. So lockdown is giving something positive, It's a way of we call it framing, or the word is used as a frame to introduce it. The same cause, if you look at Donald Trump, he's framing all the time. He's talking about fake news. This one is the fake news media and their partner, the Democrat Party, is doing everything within its semi-considerable power. It used to be greater to inflame the coronavirus situation far beyond what the facts would warrant. Surgeon General, the risk is low to the average American. That's what he tweeted. But then, at a certain moment, he said at the press conference, he changed. He saw there was a danger. And he said, okay, well, maybe in America we can have 1 million victims. So suddenly, he's changing everything. He's changing everything. And in that sense, he's using it as a kind of goal-setting strategy. I will explain that to you later. So he is using a figure. And a figure is an anchor. So a figure is also used as words are used as a frame, but figures and words are also used as an anchor. Another good example of framing and the power of words is "We schaffen das," said by Angela Merkel, the president of Germany. And you see, they had a lot of positive reactions for those people who are in favor of helping people who are victim of war. But on the other hand, most of the German people were against it because this is not possible to take in everyone who is a victim of war. So you see what those words are doing to people. And you see that with the words "we schaffen das," Angela Merkel has lost some of her influence and power. And here is a simple one. If I cycle on my bike, I enjoy it, even if it's raining. Or if you are a sports fanatic and it's raining, you enjoy running in the rain. But as soon as you have to do something in the rain for work, it's suddenly work. And you give it a totally different flavor. It's seen as something, well, it's negative. Well, if you frame something in your mind as something very positive and enjoyable, you enjoy doing it. And if you see it sometimes, people as work, as something very negative, and then you don't like to do it. Also, an example of framing. Well, behind this is also the anchoring theory. And the anchoring theory say, well, we use words as an anchor. And that anchor theory uses an anchor. And that anchor makes how you think about something. So words can be an anchor, and words can be an anchor. Smashing, for instance, that's an anchor. But also, if you are going to buy a television set, and you see it, the first television set you see is about €800, then a television set for €600 is cheap, and a higher price is of course expensive. So people use anchors as a way, and particularly if you have ever done negotiation skills training, you know the first offer or the first bid, that's the anchor. And around the anchor, we change our thinking. So it's also a kind of frame, an anchor we use. Okay, framing. I call it framing. Anchoring is also a way of framing things. And how we think shapes our behavior. So the words we use, the amounts we use, that's all say the way we frame things. As an example, do we frame work as learning or as a performance activity where we have to achieve goals? We see a tendency nowadays to change that a little bit towards a performance activity instead of, work as a learning activity instead as a performance. If you go for goals, that's very risky. And if you go for learning, people feel more free to open up. And now, okay, how are we to set our targets, our anchors? Now, an example is you can go for under-promise and over-performance, or the other way around, under-promise and over-promise and under-performance. Trump said, well, maybe we can have 1 million victims. In that sense, he is under-promising, because his over-performance will be that there will be less victims. And if there are less victims, it will all be his work. So it will be his contribution to that. So in a way, he uses under-promising and over-performing. And you can also do that in target setting. So what are you doing? Are you over-promising and under-performing? And in the service industry, if you under-promise and over-perform, people feel very good. In the other way around, people feel worse. And then a very important bit in framing is, are we going for blamestorming or are we going for brainstorming? And blamestorming is we sit in a circle and we try to find someone who we can blame for everything. And you see blamestorming going around all the time now. And that's terrible, because you frame something and we see that something is a victim. You see that in fake news at the moment. For instance, they say that 5G is the cause of corona. So it's a kind of trying to find someone to blame for the problems. And of course, China is the big cause of corona. So how do you frame things? Are you framing it in a positive way, or are we going for victims to get rid of the problems? We are not to blame for things. Okay, I'm to move on, because what's very important in this whole what's happening at the moment, and also to do something what sets our mind, it's fear. And the thing is, human brains are wired to give priority to bad news. That's something we got in from the early time. We had to survive. We had to survive. If you want to survive, you get a tunnel vision and say, okay, this is important to survive. So you leave all the opportunities out. You're only going for the things that helps you survive. So we are more inclined to look for survival things than for things that give us a gain. Now, we have a lot of fear, and in companies, I see we have a lot of fear. Let me give you an example. I work for an organization, and we were very successful. And everyone was creative and doing things and opening up and criticizing. So everyone was very in a positive gain mood. Then suddenly results went down. And there was only one solution to solve the problems, was cost cutting. And one of the parts of cost cutting was to reduce the amount of personnel. So we had to lay off people. And then suddenly you saw everyone changing. You saw fear getting into the organization, and suddenly people were reacting different. And they were afraid to speak up, and you need people to speak up in order to grow. And what happened was this. Where fear comes in, we don't speak up because we are afraid of being seen as ignorant. Now, being seen as ignorant is, okay, if someone asks a question and someone says it's a stupid question, people are seen as stupid, or I should have known that. So, and ignorant questions are very important. Sometimes children ask the best questions. Or being seen as incompetent. Well, you should have known that. What a stupid question. Or being seen as negative. You are not. Sometimes a quote in companies is, don't give me problems, give me solutions. Or do you want to be part of the problem, or do you want to be part of the solution? And those quotes give a negative frame and stop people to speak out. Or being seen as disruptive. There is he or she again with all the questions. Yeah. And then we start blamestorming instead of brainstorming. So fear is very important. And particularly in this corona situation, fear is important, and we have to tackle this. We have to tackle this, and you need creativity and an open mind instead of a fear tunnel vision to solve the problems. And how to deal with fear, that's the question. I have some tips. First of all, bite the bullet. Address the fear. Talk about it. That's very, very important. Bite the bullet. Address the fear. That's very important. Well, because otherwise it's hidden. And if people can talk about it, there are more chances that they can do something with it about it. Now, be open about your own fears. Shared sorrow is half sorrow. If you have a problem in the company and it's a shared problem, and the word shared or together is the magic word at the moment, then it's half a sorrow. It's an English saying, shared sorrow is half sorrow. So share your sorrows. The third one is transparency and information. If you don't trust the information and you say they're hiding something, then people are getting afraid. A good example is how the University of Maastricht did a very good job when they were hacked. They were very transparent. They said, "Okay, we paid some ransom money. We did this, this, and this." And at the end, they even gave a press conference where they told everything they had done. So transparency and information is very, very important, in particularly in these cases. And transparency also helps to get a general vision about the problem. But if people are afraid, they don't speak up and don't give and don't share information. Transparency and information, give security as possible. As far as possible, give security. I give you an example about fake security, but it worked in this case. There was a group in the beginning of 1900s. There was a group of soldiers who were lost in the Alps. They were lost, and what happened? There was thunderstorms, terrible weather, and they were panicking a little bit, the group of soldiers. Then they found a map. And with the help of that map, they could escape the Alps and came back to, say, the civilized world and got shelter. But afterwards, if you look at the map, it was a map of the Pyrenees. So it wasn't a map of the Alps. So sometimes information gives, even if it's a wrong information, but we say, okay, let's do this. It gives security. And even sometimes, well, as a company, you must have a map, a plan to get out of business. And then, if things are going wrong, you must realize it. And therefore, people must speak up and be open again. Then, for me, the last one I want to say, okay, how do you frame things is very important. You have to deal with fear, one way or the other. And then maybe the most important thing is work together on a way out. Use the power of words and imagination to get out of the problems. Thank you.